So there are trials obviously ongoing in limited stage small cell lung cancer with immunotherapy. I think that these patients, some of these patients can actually do very well with just chemo and radiation, as Tawfiq pointed out. Patients that have sort of pre-existing paraneoplastic syndromes, they actually often, their paraneoplastic phenomena stay with them after treatment, and that's can be a harbinger of really good outcome. And so it's going to be more challenging, I think, to develop immunotherapy for these limited stage patients. What are your thoughts, Jamie? Can you tell me what your thoughts are and what you know about the trial landscape or some of the trials you've had experience with in limited stage disease?
So we don't institutionally have any of the trials for limited stage open with chemo IO, but there are certainly many. I think there's a combination of durva-tremi being studied following chemoradiotherapy. I hear you about some subset of patients doing well, but that subset's small. And at 5 years, you're still looking at about a 20% survival. So akin to stage 3 unresectable non-small cell lung cancer, we need to do better. I think the real question here is going to be whether the immunotherapy should follow chemoradiation, or if we should be looking at it with chemoradiation, looking at the maintenance studies and in extensive stage and seeing that they're negative, which was a surprise, but we should be investigating everything in this small but potentially curable patient population.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I agree. I think that it's going to be potentially tricky to give twice a day radiation which in itself can be pretty crippling for patients. So to kind of give IO, presumably there are safety studies that are being done. Maybe you want to talk about the concurrent approach and what your thoughts are?
Yeah, so there are a number of studies. One that I'm directly involved with, NRGLU005, and that is using the approach of concurrent followed by maintenance atezolizumab. And there was actually a lot of discussion during the design of that trial with regards to the choice of radiation delivery. Ultimately, the decision was made to leave it to the investigators to decide whether they want to use BID or single daily fractionation, because you want to make it real world. You don't want to do a study that nobody can then use at the end of the day. So that study is currently enrolling. It's a phase 2-3 trial that will compare concurrent chemoradiation plus atezo followed by atezo maintenance to standard arm of concurrent chemoradiation alone. It's led by one of my colleagues at Emory, Dr. Kristen Higgins. There is also the Stimulate trial, which was a company-sponsored or supported trial by EORTC trial led by Dr. Peters. That is looking at maintenance nivo EP following concurrent chemoradiation treatment. My knowledge of that study is accrual has been very slow compared to what they anticipated, and I think part of that was toxicity from the preceding chemo-RT in this patient that's delaying their ability to go on nivo EP. And then the Adriatic study that Jamie alluded to before, which is a 3-arm trial that is also going to look at maintenance question of durva-tremi or placebo. That is also enrolling. I think in the next couple of years, we're going to have answers to these questions, whether the concurrent approach is the right thing to do, or do we just wait, give the chemo-RT first, and then, like Pacific, go with consolidation treatment?
I will say this, I think that in this setting, although we've been kind of jaded by the negative maintenance trials in the extensive stage setting, remember that in that setting, you're using systemic agents alone, and now you're kind of doing the Pacific-like regimen where you've got chemorads, followed by then, a combination or immunotherapy. And so again, trying to capitalize, is there a synergy there? Would it be different in that setting using these agents in the maintenance setting when you have the combination chemoradiation prior to that? And the second thing would be, well, would that be better tolerated? If you're sequencing these agents in a sicker population, is that also an advantage for small cell lung cancer to do the immunotherapy following chemorads in that setting. So I think it's an interesting strategy. It's a different question. It's not truly just a maintenance. We're really talking about consolidation in my mind. So I think it's a little bit different, and I'm interested in seeing what the results are going to show.
I think for limited stage patients, they're unlike extensive stage where maintenance was hard to deliver with only a median cycle of 1. And I guess for consolidation, you at least will have, they're unlikely to progress right away, so you'll actually have time to deliver the drugs. Yep.
It'll be a really good setting to sort of investigate some of our observations of toxicity in small cell, more extensive stage experience, particularly in those patients who've had brain radiation, who've had PCI. And it's going to be important to understand if the toxicity profile of IO after PCI is different than in a general population.
Do you see any usage of immunotherapy with chemo or post-chemo rads and off-label in the community? Are people extrapolating the extensive
Specific
stage?
from non-small cell to small. Actually, I've not seen much of that. Perhaps in part because of insurance coverage. You can't get the past insurance there, you can't use it. I'm sure somebody must have thought of doing that.
These do tend to be the patients who don't make it to academics.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
But these limited stage patients, I have to say, I see them pretty infrequently. I don't know, it's probably, I would say 10% in my experience, so it's going to be harder to do these trials.
Yeah, they do tend to stick in the community where the treatment of this disease hasn't really changed in a long time, and they feel the urgency to get started quickly.